Good afternoon. We will begin with the refuge and bodhicitta prayer as usual. O Sanje Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Jabsum Che Dage Jinso Gibe Sanam Je Drola Penjer Sanje Drobar Sho Sanje Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Jabsum Je Dage Jinso Gibe Sanam Je Drola Penjer Sanje Drobar Sho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chabsum Che Dage Jinso Gibe Sanam Je Drola Penjir Sanje Drobar Sho Sanjen Tamje Dewata Dewe Judan Dhamar Juje Donga Dan Donga Judan Drawar Jurchip Dongal Mebe Dewa Tamba Tam Bindralwa Jurchip Nyeren Shadan Nitang Dralwe Tanyon Shembola Nebra Jurje until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of being generous and so forth, may I become a Buddha to help beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of being generous and so forth, may I become a Buddha to help beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha Dharma and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of being generous and so forth, may I become a Buddha to help beings. In the Dharma Expanse Palace of Akanishtas, the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Gurus. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And now think to yourself that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings, for as limitless as space, to the state of completely perfect Buddhahood. And for that reason, we must practice the true Dharma. And in order to practice the Dharma, we first have to listen to it. So please listen in this way with a motivation of bodhicitta. The Dharma that we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the Ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his commentary, Youthful Play. Among the 8 chapters, we are discussing the 4th chapter. Teachings on karma. Teachings on karma begin with a description of how everything arises from karma, then a long section on the understanding of karma, and then it concludes with a presentation of synonyms as an overview. And so we are in this section on the long description of the understanding karma itself, which has a brief presentation of karma. Then it has the description of karma according to the general presentation as given by the Great Exposition School, and then the presentation of karma according to the sutras. And in the presentation of karma according to the sutras, where did we go? That's the wrong page. Oh yeah, the meaning of karma as explained in the sutras has two topics, the general teachings and specific explanations. So in the general teachings, we have four topics, the classifying in terms of cause and result, teaching the many enumerations of karma, which karma has how many results, and other presentations. So we're talking about classifying karma in terms of cause and result. So basically this is saying that we're looking at our actions in terms of what the cause is, what the result is. There are many different ways we can classify that, so this is giving a bunch of different ways to classify them. So there's the classifying in terms of so we have classifying in terms of the result, classifying in terms of cause, and classifying in terms of both cause and result. So classifying in terms of result has the four topics of classifying in three as virtue, etc. So we can classify karma as virtuous, unvirtuous, and neutral. Or we can classify it in three, and the three are what? They are meritorious, non-meritorious, and unmoving. And then classifying in three by experience. And so this means like the sensation. Karma that is experienced as pleasure. Karma that is experienced as pleasant. Karma that is experienced as unpleasant, karma that is experienced as neither pleasant nor unpleasant, that is, as neutral. And then the explanation of the latter two. So we are talking about the actual the three ways. Where did we get to? Oh, it's always hard to tell where we are in these things. The explanation of the latter two. Oh yes, the explanation of the latter two, that's where we're at right now. There are a lot of subpoints here. But before I get into the text that we are talking about, there was one email that came in. Someone has a question. We've been talking a lot about vows. And so, well, it's pretty clear that, that we have to keep the vows, but the question is, well, what in terms of breaking them, what if we have a dream that we are breaking a vow? Does that actually break the vow? Now, the answer of this is explained elsewhere later on in the chapter, but I'll give a brief answer now. The answer is actually no, because you're not doing an action. For example, imagine that you are married and you're sleeping next to your husband or wife. Your spouse, I'll just say spouse. You're sleeping next to your spouse and you have a dream that you murder your spouse. I'm not going to go into details. Then you wake up. Either you're happy or unhappy. If you wake up and you look over and your spouse is still alive, have you actually done anything? No. So there's no actual basis of the karma. There's no actual act. So you haven't actually broken your vows. What you have done is what's called a preparation for the karma. You've had the thought of doing it. So that's a preparation. There's something slightly negative about that. And how negative it depends upon what you do next. If you have that dream and then you wake up and you see your husband is alive and you think, or your spouse is alive. I'm looking, so anyway, so you see your spouse is alive and you think to yourself, oh God, thanks. I'm glad I didn't do that. Boy, close one there. Then that's okay. It's probably not so bad. It's not great, but what do? You're not really in that control of your mind. You just have to train your mind gradually. There's not much to do about that. If you wake up and said, oh, I should have finished the job, and then lean over and strangle them, that's a different matter entirely. Then you have broken your vows, because then you strangle them, and the moment they die, then you've actually killed them, right? So that would be the actual basis. And then when you hide the body and do whatever you do to the body, that would be the aftermath of the act. But you have to have the actual basis. You actually have to kill the person to break the vow on killing. You actually have to verbally say the lie. You actually have to verbally tell someone that you've achieved Buddhahood to actually break the vow, or that you've realized impermanence, or that you've realized the nature of the mind when you haven't, and you know you haven't. If you think you've realized it, but you haven't really realized it, and you tell people you've realized it, you haven't really broken the vow on the lies. But if you know that you don't have that, and you just want people to look up to you and say, I've realized the nature of my mind, you have broken your vows on not lying. But if you dream of doing this, you haven't told anyone because you're in a dream. No one can hear it, right? So in the dream state, you don't actually break the vows. So that's the question that came in last night, or this morning. Well, I got it this morning. Maybe they sent it at night. I don't know. So when we're talking about the ways here, what we're the part that we talked about yesterday, we started talking about the three ways that karma is experienced. So we talked about karma that is experienced as pleasure, karma that is experienced as neutral, and where did we leave off yesterday? We left off yesterday with the explanation of non-virtuous felt as suffering here, right? Yeah. So we talked about that's felt as pleasant. That would be karma that's felt as experienced as pleasure in the desire realm, or the first three levels of jhana. Then the karma experienced as neutral is experienced in the fourth level of jhana, and the higher levels, the formless realm. And then non-virtue is what we experience as pleasant here. But then here there's a little bit of a debate, and the debate is, well, can't you have neutral experiences as the full ripening of karma in other places? So how does that get classified? And so that's the point that we're talking about now. So it says here on page 330, presenting others' positions, verse 48. Some say that in the lower there is middling too, since there is ripening in special jhana, and since the three can ripen without earlier or later. So here, some other scholars, not the Great Exposition, it doesn't really identify them clearly in the auto commentary. They say, well, but wait a minute, this position that the ripening is neutral is only in the fourth jhana and higher is not correct, because you can ripen as birth in the special jhana, in the level of great Brahma. You get that, and that on that level, because you're doing the special dhyana, and it's a dhyana that requires a little bit of effort. There's no feeling of pleasure there. The feeling on the special dhyana is neutral. So this is what we will discuss next year when we go through that's in the 8th chapter. So how is that? Because you can be reborn there and you have the neutral feeling. And since the three can ripen without earlier or later, so it's taught that you can have the three types of karma, the karma experienced as pleasant, the karma experienced as unpleasant, and the karma experienced as unpleasant is a synonym for suffering, actually. And the karma experienced as neutral, you can experience them, the ripenings of those can all happen at the same time, they say. So how is it that we can't have neutral? So here, that's the position that we have here. Some say, in the commentary it reads, that in the lower levels of the third jhana and lower, there is middling, the karma experienced as neutral too. So it's not just the karma doesn't only ripen as neutral in the fourth jhana and the formless realms, it also ripens lower, in the lower realms. And the reason why, you ask, is it is since in the actual practice of the first jhana, there is the fully ripened feeling in special dhyana, and there is a level where there's only neutral feeling. So when you are doing the first jhana, then on that basis you can do the special jhana. And that special jhana has the full ripened feeling, can have a fully ripened feeling of neutral feeling. So therefore, there is that neutral feeling. So this would be someone who is born in the realms of the first level of form realm, who is born particularly in the great Brahma's abode, where they are experiencing the special dhyana, which is a type of the first dhyana, and they have neutral feeling. So there is neutral feeling, they say. Additionally, the treatise, that is the Great Exposition, no, this is probably not the Great Exposition, this is probably the Treatise on Designation, says, in this way can the full ripening of the three karmas, that is, experienced as pleasant, experienced as suffering, experienced as neutral, fully ripen without any earlier or later, you ask. They can, it says. So, in the commentary here, it doesn't give a whole lot of explanation. It says, this is since it is proposed that the three karmas can fully ripen without earlier or later in the desire realm, which is impossible in the other realms. So here, this doesn't give a lot of explanation of it. This is one of those points that maybe is less important. But actually, when you think about it, it is kind of important. Let's say that you're born in the desire realm. You're born in like a good birth, like you're born as a god or a human. And when you're born, you have the fully ripened I faculty, the I. That is a result of virtue. It's a pleasant result if you're born in a high realm. So that form can be pleasure. Now, they don't give a lot of explanation of this in either the auto commentary. Yashamitra doesn't really explain it, but he basically says that the I can be experienced as pleasure. And then at the same time, you can have in your mind, in any of the consciousnesses, you can also be experiencing an unpleasant feeling. But this would have to be an unpleasant bodily feeling, not mental feeling. So this would have to be the 5 sensory consciousnesses. So at the same time as your eye is feeling good, maybe you're feeling an itch someplace else. I don't know. Something like that. But you can have a fully ripened, an unpleasant feeling that is the result of karma in the 5 consciousnesses. And then at the same time as that, you also can have a non-concurrent formation, such as attainment, the arising, staying, perishing, and so forth, which are neutral in feeling. They're not felt as pleasure, they're not pleasant. You can hardly feel them, you don't even know that you really have them. But there's the Great Exposition proposes that there are the 14 different types of non-concurrent formation, such as attainment, which basically just means having something. So the fact that you have the I, that you've attained the I, is a neutral dharma. So in that way, you can have all 3 at the same time, they're saying. So here, really what we're saying, when we talk about the different types of karma, it gets actually very complicated. So the main point we should take from this is that actually when we talk about things in terms of karma being experienced as pleasure, karma being experienced as suffering, karma being experienced as neutral feeling, or when we talk about virtue leading to pleasure, non-virtue leading to suffering, and neutral leading to neutral, we have to actually realize that that is basically kind of a rough teaching. It's an overall teaching. It's not exactly ironclad. I'm kind of being a little bit free with the words, but this point is made in the auto commentary that it's not actually, this is explaining it in this way is just saying that there are virtuous karmas that ripen as neutral feelings. So virtue, for example, the virtuous karma that ripens as rebirth in the special dhyana, the virtuous karma that ripens as rebirth in the 4th jhana and above. Those are virtuous karmas. We generally say virtue leads to pleasant, but there are occasions where virtue would lead to unpleasant. or not, no, virtue would not lead to unpleasant. Virtue would lead to neutral. Forget that sentence. Edit that one out. if we ever make videos, we have to edit that one out. But we're not going to make videos because it just wouldn't be worth it. It's already on YouTube. So there are occasions where the virtuous karmas can ripen as neutral. Now, I suppose you could also use the same logic. This is speculation. We should think about it. Is it possible, therefore, to have an unvirtuous karma that would ripen as neutral? So what could that be if we had an unvirtuous karma? Say you actually woke up in the middle of the night and murdered your spouse, as we just said. Now, that's an unvirtuous karma. That's probably going to end up, you're going to end up in the hell realm where there's nothing pleasant, so it's not going to ripen as pleasure. Right? So it's not pleasure. Could there be something neutral in the hell realm? Well, there would also be the attainments in the hell realm. There would also be the characteristics of the composites and so forth. So you could use the same logic to say, okay, well, it also applies to the hells as well. But that's just kind of making it complicated. Really, the most important thing to think in your mind is that when we talk about the higher states, when we say, what is the feeling on the higher states of the jhanas and formless realms, we say, it's a neutral feeling, because it is a neutral feeling. But if we're going to classify it as pleasant or unpleasant, we'd probably say it's probably more pleasant than unpleasant, right? It's definitely not suffering. And so it's a desirable result. It's something that that in worldly terms you would want to achieve. Yeah, in worldly terms, who wouldn't want to spend 80,000 eons experiencing no pain? Sounds pretty good. So the main point is that we have to think about this in terms of, you kind of have to think about it, karma a little bit on both the general level and on the specific level. To really understand something, you have to look on the specific level. To get a basic idea, to kind of motivate yourself, it's good to look on the general level. You have to find that balance in between the two. So thinking about karma and contemplating karma, and thinking about how your action is going to ripen is incredibly important. It's important for us to do this. So when we talk about karma that is experienced as pleasure, we need to identify what those actions that will be experienced as pleasure are, and what types of pleasure we actually want to experience. Do we really want to experience the formless realms? Now, of course, I've been picking on the formless realms for the last few weeks, but do we even want to experience the dhyanas? I mean, what do we want to experience? What do we want to have? We have to think about that. And it's really important for us to keep this in mind. It's really hard. So how do we get an idea of this? We have to think about it. We have to study and read. It's like the Shantideva says in The Way of the Bodhisattva. The sages said the basis of everything virtuous is longing. The root of that is meditating on the full ripening of karma. So we have to go and we have to understand, how is it that karma ripens? We have to understand why our negative actions lead to unpleasant results, that our positive actions lead to pleasant results. We have to meditate upon that if we're going to make any progress on the path. If we look at the stories of the great masters, like if we think about the life of Milarepa, and you think, what is the most important thing about the life of Milarepa? And we often think about, his realization of Mahamudra and so forth, and for most of us, frankly, that's a long way off. We got to get there first. And how is it that Milarepa got to the point where he had those experiences? He killed 35 people, and then he realized he was going to hell. He had complete confidence in karmic cause and effect. And because he had such great confidence and such great fear of the result of his horrible action, he therefore was extremely diligent in his practice. If he didn't have that confidence, he wouldn't have done what he's doing. So if we want to be like Milarepa, it doesn't mean that we need to, go buy a white cotton robe and go off and find a cave. It means we have to start by getting that same motivation. We have to start by understanding karmic cause and effect. Don't start by murdering 35 people. I'm not recommending that. But get the same, you have to have that same confidence in karmic cause and result. And then you'll have the motivation to be able to actually do the practice. Because we don't have that basic motivation. That comes from really thinking to ourselves hard. But it's hard, it's difficult for us as Westerners coming in. We don't have that, maybe it's difficult for a lot of people. When we can't see it, we don't have the cultural background if we're coming from a secular education. And so it takes a lot of thought, and you have to think about your own experience and think about, how did you get here? How much of it is what we would call just chance? And what is that? Is that really chance? Everything comes from causes and conditions. So what are the causes and conditions? You have to look for yourself. At any rate, that's kind of looking at it in terms of how do we know, so we're doing our action, so what do we need to think about to keep ourselves from doing good, from bad action, from prevent ourselves from doing bad actions, and to encourage ourselves to do as much good as we can. But we also have to understand how our actions are going to ripen on us. We have to understand what actually is going to occur to us. What are the different possibilities? And so that is what the next section is talking about. Additionally, teaching the 5 ways that karma is experienced. Because here, when we've been talking about karma experienced as pleasant, karma experienced as suffering, karma as experienced as neutral. Those are feelings. Well, it's not just feelings. So you might wonder, is it only the sensation that you have at a particular moment that is the result of karma? And the answer is no. There are actually 5 different aspects for what that result is. And this is listed in verse 49. Inherently, concurrently, through focus as full ripening or else directly manifesting. 5 ways that karma is experienced. So here we've got 5 different ways. The first is that the karma is experienced inherently. So it's inherently experienced. It's a sensation. The result of the karma is a sensation. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Not mentally unpleasant, possibly mental pleasure. Concurrently, that means that it would be something that is concurrent with that feeling. In particular here, it means the contact. Through focus, this means that by focusing on an object, so it could arise as the object that you are focusing or that you are observing, and so forth, as full ripening. So it could be the result of the full ripening, or else directly manifesting. So that means that it is the actual manifestation of a feeling. And so there's a little bit of a subtle difference between directly manifesting and inherently. They're both talking about feelings, but there's kind of a different way that you're looking at them. So I'll explain that as we go through the commentary. Inherent experience is feeling. So when you have an experience as a result of, when karma results in a pleasant feeling, and that inherent experience is the pleasurable feeling. And that's the inherent, because feeling is inherently experience. The characteristic of feeling is experience, as it says in the first chapter. Feeling's experience, right? So feeling is experience. So you have an experience, that feeling itself, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, is inherently that. So if you were born in the bliss of the first jhana, then you are feeling physical pleasure, right? Or if you were born as a god, or as if you were born as a wealthy person, or as a human, as a comparative pleasure. Concurrently, concurrent experience is contact. So concurrent here is a kind of technical word talking about the relationship between mind and mental factors. We went over this last year, but some of you weren't with us last year. Many of you weren't with us last year. So at the same time as you have any mind, you also have a number of mental factors that happen at the same time. There's some that happen with every cognition, like feeling, contact, volition, prajna, and so forth, intent. And then there's some that only happen with a few, such as the virtuous mental factors, the unvirtuous. So here, when you say concurrently, then we're talking about mental factors that are concurrent with the pleasurable feeling. So let's say you're experiencing a pleasurable result of karma. So at that point, you have that feeling of pleasure, which is the inherent experience. And then concurrent with that, you also have the mental factor of contact. So in particular, when we say concurrently, here we mean contact. And the reason why we're saying contact is because it is the contact that is compatible with the experience of pleasure. You might remember a couple of weeks ago when we were speaking about the 12 links of interdependence, we talked about the contact, and we talked about how there is contact, the contact that leads to different types of feelings. So that's what that we are speaking about here. So concurrent experience is contact. The contact that is compatible with the experience of pleasure is experienced as pleasure. So that means like you are feeling something pleasant. Okay? Then through focus. So focus is a word. It also is, sometimes it's like a synonym for the object of the object of consciousness. And so here that is the meaning that it means. So the focus. So you have a pleasurable feeling, and that comes from contact. It's the contact that's compatible with that. And at the same time as you have those, you're observing an object. You've got some object of that consciousness. So if you are, what do we say? You were born in the bliss of the heaven of the 33. And you just feel on this comfortable bed. Now you're born sitting on the lap of your mother. Or father. It says parents, doesn't it, in this text? Anyways, you're sitting on the lap, you've got these beautiful silken clothes, everything, you're fine. That's a fully ripened experience. You have the feeling of the silk clothes that you're wearing, right? There's a bodily feeling. That the silk clothes would be the object, the focus. The contact of the silk clothes with your skin would be the contact that is compatible with pleasure, and then the feeling that you have is pleasure, right? Karmas are also experienced as full ripening of the result. So this is experience you perform an action. This would be like full ripening, such as the moment of birth in a realm, such as the God realms or the hell realms or whatever, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Or else experience through directly manifesting as feeling. Because it is said, at the time that the feeling of pleasure is experienced, at that time the two feelings cease. So what this is saying here is that when we experience pleasure, for example, then at the time we're experiencing pleasure, that pleasure is manifest. Now, if we're in the desire realm, we also have the capacity, we have the faculties or capacity to experience neutral feelings and unpleasant feelings. But any consciousness you can only feel one of those three feelings towards any given object at a single time. So when you have that feeling of pleasure is manifest, then that feeling is said to be a direct manifestation or directly manifest feeling. At that point, the feelings of suffering or pain and the feelings of neutral are not manifest, so they're not they wouldn't be considered. So this is kind of similar to inherently. You'd say, is that feeling of pleasure then, is that also inherently experienced? Yes, it is inherently experienced because it's a feeling. But here we're stressing that at that point it's the one that's present and then it's experienced, right? So it's perceptible at that point. So the karma experienced in these ways can be experienced as pleasure, suffering, or neutral. So thus there are 5 ways that karma is experienced. So we've got 5 different things that can happen. So it's not like So we've got the inherent, concurrent, focus, full ripening, and the direct manifest, these 5 different ways. So the full ripening of karma itself is not actually just a single thing on its own. It's like there are many different experiences that come up, or that come together, many different aspects of the experience. So now when we're thinking about the karma, these are 5 different ways. When we do any action, it's going to propel a karmic ripening. And we'll talk more about what makes a karmic action be able to propel an existence. We'll talk more about that later in the chapter. Right now, we're kind of talking about different types of karmas. So when we talk about them, the experience, and one of the ways we talk about karma is in terms of how it propels a new lifetime in particular. This is something that's very important for us because we want to make sure that next time around we can continue. If we didn't care about continuing the practice on the path, we could be reborn anywhere. It wouldn't matter. But here we have to make sure that we're going to be reborn in a position where we can practice Dharma, right? If we've got this kind of pragmatic look at it. So we have to understand then that we have different types of karmas. Some of them are definitely going to cause rebirth, and some of them are not. So we have to kind of understand that. So here, in terms of understanding the particulars of experience, we have 2 parts of this, the overview and the explanation. So the overview is they're definite or indefinite. So this means that the actions that you're doing, some of the actions that you commit are definitely going to have a karmic result. Some of the actions that you commit are not definitely going to have a karmic result, or the time frame of the karmic result is indefinite. Some are definitely going to be experienced, such as if you kill your mother or your father or commit any of the other heinous acts, you have a definite result. You will die and you will go immediately to the incessant hell. That is a definite result with a definite time frame. After you die, you're going straight there. So the 3 ways karma are experienced are twofold. So whether the karma is experienced as pleasant, whether it's experienced as unpleasant, or whether it's experienced as neutral, are twofold: the definitely experienced and the indefinitely experienced. So that's the 2, so the definite and the indefinite. So now for the explanation of that, we have the general classification, their individual attributes, and teachings on karma that will definitely be experienced. So here we have the general classification. There are 2 points here: our own tradition, that is the Great Exposition's own tradition, and others' traditions. So their own tradition is that there are 3 definite because there's visibly experienced, etc. So this means we've got the 3 definite experiences. We've got karma that will be visibly experienced, karma that is experienced upon birth, karma that is experienced in other lifetimes. Those are the 3 different types of definite karma. And then you add indefinite karma, and that makes 4. So we count 4 different types of karma. This is a general teaching. Karma that is experienced, that is visibly experienced, is karma that we experienced in this lifetime. This lifetime is currently visible to us, so therefore it is experienced in this visible lifetime. So karma experienced in the visible, or visibly experienced, is a synonym for karma experienced in this lifetime. So this is a little bit more literal translation. If you look at other translations, they'll say karma experienced in this lifetime. When I was translating it, I was in a kind of literal phase and called it visibly experienced. But I think that there is something, this term does come up a lot in other texts as well. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Visibly experienced karma is karma experienced in this lifetime. Upon birth means in the very next lifetime, such as when you commit the heinous acts or if you achieve dhyana or whatever. And then there's karma experienced in other lifetimes, which is karma that is definitely going to be experienced, but it might be if this is the first lifetime, the next is your second, it might be in your third, it might be in your fifth, it might be in the 10th, some other lifetime. And then you've got indefinitely experienced, which is kind of like when things come together, then it might ripen. So here in the commentary it says, there are three different types of definitely experienced karma, because there's karma that is visibly experienced in this lifetime, etc., including karma experienced on birth and karma experienced in other lifetimes. Now, others traditions, there are 2 points, because, of course, there are always different Buddhist schools with different positions. So some propose 5 types. Some earlier masters proposed that the indefinitely experienced is divided into indefinite full ripening and indefinite period. So this means that what they're saying here is indefinite full ripening is, it's going to ripen as something, but we're not exactly certain what it's going to ripen as. Indefinite period means it's going to ripen, but we don't know exactly when. Maybe this lifetime, maybe 100 lifetimes down, we don't know when. So that there are 5 types of karma. So that would be the 3 types of visibly experienced on birth and experienced in other lifetimes, plus the indefinite full ripening and the indefinite period for 5 types of karma. So the way that this is counted is that there are 2 indefinite, karma with definite ripening but indefinite time frame, and karma with both indefinite. It's both indefinite. So my commentary there was just a little bit off. So you can either have indefinite full ripening or both indefinite ripening and indefinite period. So that's their position. The next one talks about the alternating between the indefinite time and the indefinite period. Adding the 3 definite of visibly experienced and the others, this makes a total of 5. So alternatively, in addition to the 3, that is visibly experienced, and the other 2, whose time frame is definite, there is karma whose essence will be definitely experienced as something for 4, and both essence and time indefinite for 5. Okay, so the karma whose essence will be definitely experienced as something. So there's the experience is definite, but the time frame is not definite. And then the 5th in that one would be essence and time frame, both indefinite for 5. So visibly experienced karma ripens in the very same life in which it is committed. So visibly experienced karma, you perform the action, and because of the strength of the action or the power of the field, that is the objects, the recipients of the action, then that action is going to be experienced definitely in this very same lifetime. So these are generally more powerful karmic actions because of the power of the intention and the power of the field or the recipients. We often talk about the recipients of an action as being the field. We talk about the field of qualities, the field of suffering, and so forth. You may have heard this term in other Dharma texts. When we talk about field, it's because it's like you're planting a karmic seed, and you've got some fields that are more fertile than others and produce a bigger result, so it's called a field. Again, this is perhaps me just being too literal, I don't know. Okay. Karma experienced on birth is experienced in the next life. And karma in other lifetimes is experienced after that. Now here there's a problem because like you have a really strong karma. Actually, it's the really strong karmas are experienced as visibly experienced, but if they ripen on us as humans, they've got a really limited duration, right? Because we're going to live a maximum of what? These days, we're going to maybe make it, we'll be toddling around in the nursing home at 104, 105 if we're lucky, but we won't be able to do anything or much. So any definite ripening we have in this lifetime is going to be short-lived. Maximum of, I subtract your life from 104. I'm just picking that number, and then that's kind of the maximum you can hope for. Maybe the young ones will have a little bit longer time than the rest of us, I don't know. But at any rate, it's not going to be a very long period. As compared to, for example, with the indefinite, or with the heinous actions, how long do they ripen for? Rebirth, and the incessant hell on that is what? Half of an eon. If you do the formless meditation, that has a definite ripening in the next, and that's like 80,000 eons. So why is it that the visibly experienced karma is so short? We have this really short time frame. You think, wait a minute, you're getting gypped. I mean, you've got this really great virtue, and you're only going to get to enjoy the results for a short period of time. What is this? And so some masters in other schools actually say that the visibly experienced results can begin in this lifetime and continue into the next lifetime. And therefore, they're called visibly experienced because they begin in this lifetime, but just so that they can last longer, they can go into the next lifetime. But Vasubandhu does not accept that position. Okay, so that is the for the 5 types. And then the tradition that proposes it as 4 possibilities, and others 4 alternatives. Okay, so others say that there are 4 alternatives between karma that is definitely karma with a definite ripening and karma with a definite time frame. So there's karma that's definitely going to ripen, but the time frame is indefinite. There's karma where the time frame is indefinite, but the ripening is indefinite. There's karma where both are definite, and there's karma where both are indefinite. And so these are what we call, and others, the darshtantikas. So this is actually another name for the sutra school. Say there are 4 alternatives. So indefinite period but indefinite, a definite period but indefinite full ripening, such as an act that is definitely going to ripen in your next lifetime, but we're not exactly certain how it's going to ripen. Definite full ripening but indefinite period, it's definitely going to ripen as some particular result, but the time is unclear. Then the third alternative is both, where both are definite. You've got the definite time frame and the definite result. And then the types where they're both the time frame and the result are indefinite. So you've got 4 possibilities. Then if you start looking at it, actually they say that for all, if we talk about the 4 basic types of karma, right? We've got visibly experienced, experienced on birth, experienced in other lifetimes, and experienced and indefinitely experienced. With the visibly experienced karma, that can either have a definite full ripening or an indefinite full ripening. Then the karma experienced on the next birth would have either indefinite ripening or definite or indefinite ripening. Likewise, karma experienced in other lifetimes can either have a definite ripening or an indefinite ripening. And then, of course, the indefinite can be both also. So in that way, they say that there are 8 types of karma. So this is kind of going and looking. So the karma they don't give explanations in the commentaries about what a karma with an indefinite ripening. And basically it's saying that it's karma that could ripen as one thing or another, and I suppose it depends upon other conditions, but they don't give like any concrete examples of what that is. So I've thought about concrete examples that maybe I could give you, but I'd just be making something up. So maybe it's better not to. But in other words, it's basically, it's like you've got karma where it's actions where it's going to happen as something at some point, but you just aren't quite sure exactly what it's going to do. So maybe something with a slightly mixed motivation, or you're doing a couple of different things, it doesn't matter. At any rate, we've basically got these 4 different types of karma. The visibly what is this that I'm thinking about? Yes, so here's the question. Can you do all four at once. Karma that is definitely experienced, next lifetime, karma experienced on birth, karma experienced in other lifetimes, and indefinitely experienced. And the answer is yes. If you are committing sexual misconduct yourself and have 3 other people do 3 other actions at the same time, all of which are going to lead to karmic ripening. So you're committing the sexual misconduct, and at the same time you've got your hitman, committing a hit, and someone stealing something, and something else going on. You can have all 4 actions happening at the same time. The one you have to do yourself is a sexual misconduct. The others you can get people to do it for you. Okay, these are the sort of teachings you get in the teachings on karma. Okay, so now we've come to the second part of this. After talking about the general classification of these particulars of experience, now we've got to talk about their individual attributes. And so the individual attributes has 2 topics: which karmas propel likeness, and how many karmic propulsions there are for the realms and for beings. And so here, what we have to understand is what we mean by propulsion, propelling. This is when you have an action that is going to cause a rebirth. So propelling karma, we call it. There's propelling karma and there's completing karma. So the completing karma is not discussed here. That's discussed later. We talk about propelling and completing karma later. But when we do these actions that are talking about creating like karma that is experienced on another lifetime, that could mean karma that is going to propel a rebirth. For example, the heinous actions are going to propel a rebirth, definitely repel a birth in your next lifetime. And other actions could definitely propel a rebirth in other lifetimes. So propelling means it's a strong action that's got enough oomph to push. It's starting that chain of causation that is going to lead to rebirth in a particular place. So it's particular, we're talking about the propelling rebirth. So here, in which karma propels likeness, we have 3 karmas will propel a likeness. So the 3 types of action that will propel a likeness. So likeness here is a term, it means like maintaining a similar class throughout, or a likeness, a similar class throughout an entire lifetime. In Tibetan, the word is ritun. Sanskrit Nikaya, so ritumpa in Tibetan, likeness. So likeness is not a literal translation. The literal translation would be like maintaining a similar class, which is even more opaque than lightness. Nikaya has a variety of meanings according to the Sanskrit dictionaries, and I'm not exactly certain. I need to look it up, investigate it a little bit further. At any rate, the propelling a likeness. So 3 of these types of actions can propel a likeness. That is, they can cause a rebirth. In one moment, can all 4 of the visibly experienced and so forth be propelled, you ask? They can. Of those 4 karmas, visibly experienced does not propel a likeness, but experienced on birth, and the other 3 karmas will propel a likeness. So here, this is the point. This is what I was speaking about a little bit before. Wangchuk Dorje is kind of combining things from different commentaries, and he's saying that in one moment. In the auto commentary, the one moment discussion comes just before this topic, and it's the topic about how to do it with sexual misconduct and 3 other actions that you ask someone else to do. But you could actually do all 4 at the same time. So you can have the visibly experienced and the 4. Of the 4 karmas, visibly experienced does not propel a likeness. It doesn't propel a likeness because it's experienced in this birth, right? Therefore, it's before you've taken a rebirth. You're still in the same likeness because there's a certain likeness that keeps with you from the moment you were born, or that is conceived, until the time you die. So when you have a karmic result occur to you in this lifetime, as a result of definitely experienced karma, or because of visibly experienced karma, then that does not propel a likeness, right? Because you're not propelling a new rebirth. But in the other three, but experienced on birth, and the other three karmas will propel a likeness. So that means that visibly experienced, you have the karma that should I do a good example or a bad example? I've been using bad examples, I'll keep doing it. So you perform the heinous karma, that propels propels rebirth in the incessant hell, right? So that's experienced on the next lifetime. Or if you commit sexual misconduct, and that means that you're going to be reborn as, I don't know what, in a few lifetimes. Or so that experienced another. Or you do some other action that would be experienced in some other life, or that could have an indefinite experience or indefinite time frame. That would be indefinite. So all of those can propel a likeness, propel a new life. In other words, three of the four. If we've talked about the four different types of karma, visibly experienced in the other three. Three are ones that you have to worry about for rebirth. The former, that is visibly experienced karma, does not propel likeness, but because it occurs in a likeness that has been propelled by another karma, it produces its result in that very one, in that very likeness, in that very lifetime, right? So it's experienced as you're in the same likeness, in the same continuum, or the same period. Of being, it's like, for example, we do it now, we do it in the period while we're human. So you commit an act today, you give, you are like King Kanishka and you save 500 bulls from castration. And then in that very lifetime, he regains his virility, shall we say. Before he had been impotent, he saved the bulls, and then he became virile again, according to the story that comes later in the chapter as well. And so that happened all in the same likeness, because he was similar the whole time. He was human the whole time. Now, when you stop being human and then you're reborn as a toad, that's a different likeness, because it's no longer like, right? So the karma that would cause him to be reborn as a toad is, if that was an action that he committed in this lifetime, would be a karma experienced on birth, propelling a likeness, and so forth. Okay. So we'll go, what do we say? How many karmic propulsions there are for the realms and beings? And this is two topics, general and specific. So we're talking about the karmic propulsions and how many are there in each different realm. This is going to do, like as humans, yeah, we can say, okay, we probably have four, but is that the same in all the realms? And so the answer is, in all realms there are four propulsions. So how many propulsions are there for each realm in Wanderer? In all realms and for all beings, there are four virtuous and non-virtuous propulsions. That is, whether you are a hell being, or a god, or a human, or an animal, whatever sort of being you are, there are four, you can do any of these four different types of karma that would propel rebirth. The intent here is that non-virtuous propulsions occur in desire only, because non-virtue only happens in the desire realm. When you are in the form realm, you can commit actions that will cause the four different types of propulsion, but you would not commit one that would result in rebirth in hell, for example, because you won't do a non-virtue while you were in the form realm, and so forth. Okay? So that is enough for this afternoon. The most important thing, and the type of karma, if you listen to teachings by Trungpa Rinpoche, the classification of karma that he most often speaks about is this classification of the four. Visibly experienced, experienced on birth, experienced in other lifetimes, and indefinitely experienced. So this is an important one to know, and it's one that comes up in a lot of other teachings, so you should think about it. And it's basically talking about the force of the karma. Now we'll get to talking about that in a few days or a week or a few weeks maybe. We'll get to that. But basically you're saying that the stronger the force of the karma, whether virtuous or unvirtuous, the sooner you're going to experience it. And that force has to do with your intention, the nature of the action, and the recipients of the action, and so forth. And so this is why, and the other circumstances surrounding it. This is why doing virtuous actions for teachers, parents in the field of qualities is so beneficial. It's why it's so important to do virtuous actions for those who are in need and suffering. That is another way to do it. When you're like, if you are, so it's important to keep this in mind and to think about when you're performing actions, how can you make the little time that we have on this earth, what can we do to make it most useful? And so if you think, if we need to practice generosity, for example, well, what is going to be the most useful sort of generosity? And so thinking about this helps you gather the accumulation of virtue, and also helps you avoid non-virtuous actions, which is really the basis for what we have to do here. So that is enough for today. We will dedicate the merit. O sanam de tam che se pani tobne nye pedranam pam chene Kegana chibala trobai sibetsolen rovarsho. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, and free all wanderers from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Thank you.